Works and Protective Services Committee meeting. Excuse me, do we have any additions or changes to the agenda?
Move approval of the agenda.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Mayor Little. In favor? So we have a couple of presentations tonight. First is Chris Vandwater from the Metchosin Arts and Culture Centre Association.
Hi everyone. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Chris Vandwater from 4569 William Head Road and President of the Metchosin Arts and Cultural Centre. We should by now all know there is the second floor in the MACCA portion of the school. There's 2 large rooms upstairs. One's leased by Charlotte Huber, Indigenous Liaison, along with Arnold Lim, videographer. The other room is the do-it-yourself room, which attracts all kinds of people, some of who need a lift because of mobility issues, people with walkers, baby strollers, and heavy supplies. Another factor is there's upstairs access to 2 large washrooms. MACCA would like to install a platform lift so everyone can access the second floor, but financially, we can't do it alone. The cost for the lift is $26,500, plus installation of a 15 amp fuse disconnect plug, the value of which is about $1,500 for that. So our total is $28,000. There's no GST. So in order to pay for the stair lift, MACCA is willing to put up $10,000 and also cover the cost for the dedicated circuit with the plug. The lift capacity, according to the manual, is 550 pounds, but it's 650 pounds in the US, so I don't know. As well, MACCA, in conjunction with the municipality as a point of contact, is applying for a grant from the Victoria Foundation. Our reasoning here is that MACCA incurred unexpected expenses when 2 of the old gas furnaces had to be replaced. The deadline for this grant is a timely April the 4th. We are optimistic that this grant will come through for about $10,000 to $12,000. That would leave a balance of about $10,000, which would be picked up by the municipality. It's the right thing to do, and we forward this attractive proposal at this opportune time as a way to finance this stair lift and get it done. If we don't do it now, when are we going to do it? I mean, there's lots of handicapped people around. We just heard VO say they need more handicap parking for Metchosin Day, so there's a whole bunch of us that need it or will need it. But anyways, thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Does Council have any questions for Chris?
I do.
Chris, please, if you could come back for a second.
Yes.
I'm just going to grill you with a few questions.
Chris, thanks very much. When do you think you might hear from the Victoria Foundation about your grant application?
Good question. So if the deadline's April 4th, I would think it wouldn't be more than a month after that. And yeah, it's perfect for their grant.
Second question. Is it your understanding of the construction and the installation of the stair lift? Is it challenging?
No.
Easy to do?
No, it's very easy. The company Arcadia, they're really used to doing all this stuff. They've put lots of stair lifts in around the municipality here. And this is a good one. They have an engineer that comes and checks it out because it's a commercial installation. And yeah, it's going to be supported from the tread, so there's no drywall to take off, which is a good thing. And the installation will take about 2 days or so. And yeah, I think it's good. It's a good time. So I got these information packages here. You can look at it later or whatever. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Any other questions? For now?
Thank you.
Oh, no, thanks, Chris.
Okay.
Hopefully we can squish it into budget talks
Yeah.
in the near future. All right, our next presentation is Fire Chief Stephanie Dunlop is going to talk about emergency operations in Metchosin, and she has a PowerPoint presentation as well.
Good evening. So I was asked to come and do just a quick briefing on the Emergency Operations Center and what we do for the district, and just to give you a little insight on how we operate and when we operate. So we will try and keep this relatively brief. This is the same slideshow that I've done to council members in years past, so you might see a few slides that look familiar. So the Metchosin Emergency Program was enacted under Bylaw 420. So we are required to have an emergency program here under the Local Authority Emergency Management Regulation and the Emergency Program Act. So federally and provincially, we're required to have an emergency plan and someone to coordinate that. That's me. So thank you very much for that job. All right, so our work here is we try and manage this under but it's called BSEMS, the BC Emergency Management System. And this is a list of priorities, and it provides emergency management, it provides the fire department, it provides emergency responders, and it provides council a way to help prioritize decision making. So for example, if there was some kind of an event or an emergency where we had to decide whether or not we should, a decision that would either save the private property versus infrastructure, we can actually go back to this BSEMS, a provincial structure, to make those decisions. So everything that we do inside of the emergency management, it actually comes back to these priorities and how we manage the disasters or emergencies that might come down the pike. So I wanted to go over kind of what we do here locally and how we respond. So under the provincial guideline, there are 3 levels to the Emergency Operations Center. Level 1 is very basic. It's a house fire, it's a car accident, a small hazmat spill, that sort of thing. It might be a windstorm that we have. And even though it's just the fire department that you might see out there, we actually activate at times our level 1 Emergency Operations Center. And that might just be the firefighters, it might be we let some of our people in the Emergency Operations Center know what's going on. And then I, as a director, will maybe call in a few other additional resources. It's our day-to-day kind of bread and butter, small emergencies, if you will. All right? We still sometimes have to get the province involved, and that's when we have to take care of people. So it's our municipal requirement to take care of people when they've been evacuated or have had to leave their home due to an emergency. So then we have to take care of them for 3 days. We then go through the province and we activate our EOC, and we're able to support them with housing and basic needs. That's kind of a level 1 response. So here we've had 3 already this year, basic fires, that sort of thing. A tree that falls through somebody's home if they need a place to stay because they can't safely stay in their home, we would activate a level 1 EOC. Okay? Level 2 is stepping it up a little bit. This might be a larger fire, it might be a couple of agencies involved, it might be a cross-border thing with one of our mutual aid partners. The Blinkhorn fire might have been a level 2 had we need to actually evacuate people. This is when we're actually going to call in some additional resources from our emergency program. We might call in an information officer, someone to start doing all of our social media, talk to the media, that sort of thing, and a liaison officer. That would be somebody that talks to other agencies that might be involved. Right, so it's just a little bit bigger. And then there's the big one, which is level 3. That might be a catastrophic, big, huge fire, regional event, an earthquake, tsunami, that sort of thing. Right, and that's when we're calling in everybody, and that's when we get the full activation going. And that's also when we really utilize more of the demands from the province as well. So we then go up to the province and get additional resources, and that's kind of that connection, is being able to have the province there to support us when we don't have the resources that we need. And that might be support of backhoes or maybe somewhere to stay, that sort of thing. Right? It really depends on the event. If it's a regional event and it affects everybody here, then sometimes even the province has to go out to other provinces, and so it goes across federally. So it's a way to be able to get resources. If we don't have it here, we can go outside and then up the ladder to other agencies and other levels of government. Inside our emergency program, we have 5 basic components. We have our Emergency Operations Center, and they're the staff. They're the management people that actually move the trains and kind of prioritize response during a bigger event. We have Search and Rescue. I'm sure you've seen them out quite a bit. They wear all the red jackets. Our Neighborhood Emergency Preparedness Program, our Emergency Support Services, and our Emergency Communications. These are pictures of our little EOC, which is the old municipal hall, that little building right next to the fire hall down there. Our emergency social services, just very basically, they provide food and lodging and basic needs for those who have been forced to evacuate under some kind of an order. So when you think of the fires up in the interior, all those people that were evacuating, they were doing that under a formal state of emergency, a declared state of emergency. They were required to leave their home. If you self-evacuate, that does not fall under the need and the guidelines for support. That's our reception center. So our reception center is where everybody, when we tell people to evacuate, that's where they go. And that is at the new St. Mary's Church. So we just have it all laid out, kind of, it's a little mini town. We have our Emergency Preparedness Program, or our PODs. And that is just, we have our neighborhoods all kind of coordinated in little groups to have connections. So that should something happen, we can check in on our neighbors. You can share resources, they can train together. There's lots of different benefits to being part of a pod. I'm trying to see if there's anything here. We do lots of training, first aid, rapid damage assessment, all kinds of Fire Smart. That's a big piece to our neighborhood emergency preparedness program. And then also, of course, during an event, that's a key. The pods play a key role in just checking in and reporting them to the EOC. So we can do a check-in process. We have our emergency communications, and that is a group of people that are very dedicated to a topic that we all think is very boring, and that's ham radios. So they use ham radios and lots of other means of communication. So it's not just the ham radios, but that is a big component of it. So they have organized radios all throughout the town, in through our pods, so that during an event, we can communicate with them. And they can communicate with us. So this is kind of what it looks like if an event were to occur. The pod peeps, if you will, are the people within the pods that have radios. They would communicate up to their pod leader, either by phone or potentially even by radio. They would go to the Emergency Communications Center, the EOC, and they would then let us know, as the director, whoever's managing the incident, how things are going. If that neighborhood has a tree down and we can't get there, we need to know that sort of thing. If there's a fire somewhere, whatever the situation might be. So it's a check-in process. This is kind of a timing. If there were a massive earthquake, kind of what we're hoping, how that process would look as far as that check-in. And I think that you have a printout of that too. Won't spend too much time. Search and Rescue is another group. It's Metchosin Search and Rescue. They actually are a provincial team, and they respond anywhere from, from Metchosin all the way out to Saanich Peninsula, Saanich area. So they have quite a wide area, and they support even further. They'll go support all the way up to island and onto the mainland if need be. So they're a very strong team. We use them, although they're a provincial team, we use them here locally for evacuations. They help us in a catastrophic event. They would help us with sprinkler protection, first aid, traffic control, very different things that we train with them. So they're not only a provincial resource, they're also a local resource here for us. Now, being in Metchosin, and we know that if anything catastrophic were to happen, we would have very limited resources here in Metchosin coming from outside. So ambulance probably wouldn't be here day one. So we have tried to create some special teams, one of which is our medical team. So we've reached out to doctors and nurses here locally and gotten a cache of supplies that hopefully, should anything catastrophic occur, we would have some resources to be able to support any medical concerns that might come up. We have our fragile community support, and these are for seniors or for people who are shut in and can't get out, and maybe we don't have communication with them, or they don't have anybody to support them in a catastrophic event. And this also isn't just for catastrophic events, it's for day-to-day operations. So we might have a spouse that is unable to walk or care for themselves, so their partner ends up going to the hospital, so now they're left at home alone. So we have a network to be able to support those people. And that is through Seniors Resource Center that we connect with them quite closely. We're currently working on, we have a drone at the fire department, so we're currently working with search and rescue to utilize that more in their searching. And our wildland and large animal, we're trying to get those programs refocused. Oh, those are going over numbers. So your role in a disaster as mayor and council, respectfully, is to ensure that your family is safe. So no work gets done, and we say this to our responders as well, until your family is safe and you're comfortable. If needed, your role in a disaster is to declare a state of local emergency. So we'll do up all the paperwork, we'll bring it to you, explain why, what the powers are that we need, and you would then sign that off. That then goes up to the province. Is the policy decision making. So it's not how we do something, it's should we do something, right? How we do things is up to our operations team, respectfully. Your role in a disaster is to be available and reachable after your family is safe, and then to understand the principles of the British Columbia Emergency Management System, those priorities that we started out with. So again, not your role in a disaster is to direct operations. So we have to be very careful that that does go through a certain process and through our operations and our director of the EOC. To give media statements. While we might have you give media statements, it's not up to mayor and council to write their own and go out and speak to the public. What we give out in a disaster especially needs to be very controlled and concise. We have some regulations that we have to follow then. So while you might do the speaking, we ask that you don't just go out and randomly report on what's going on. And the other thing that's not your role in a disaster is to sit in the Emergency Operations Center. And while a visit and a tour and an update is certainly what we want to provide for you, it's not your role to sit in there and dictate what goes on, respectfully. Our budget, as you know, and this is I think last year's or 2 years ago numbers, is sitting at about 25.8. Now we do get an additional, usually $60,000 in grant money, so that really helps us a great deal with our Emergency Operations Center. We're very fortunate, we have a very interactive group here in Metchosin, our stakeholders. So we meet quarterly with all of the agencies around, from Community House to William Head to Beecher Bay, D&D, everybody meets together. But we just talk about anything emergency related. We make connections, we think about plans, we do drills, tests, and it's really a great meeting to sit at. It lasts about 2.5 hours, but it's certainly engaging. And these are a bunch of other meetings and such that we go into. Emergency operations, there's a lot of people that talk about it, so there's lots of meetings to attend, so I'm sure you guys can relate to. We've had a lot of questions about our emergency notification program. So I just wanted to do a quick slide on that. We do have plans that have been updated. You may not have a screen. I've added this one since that was printed out for you, so I'm not sure if it's in your, is it in there? Okay. So for information only, if people need to find out what's going on, we will present on social media and we'll send an email out. If it's something that the public needs to know. If there's an advisory, so a tsunami, there's a wildfire nearby, something that people need to be on the lookout for, we will do social media, we'll send an email out, and we'll do our phone notification program. If there's an imminent or urgent thing, there will be the emergency phone notification, just massive to everybody. And that we have done a test on that. It does take 30 minutes to get everybody out, but everybody who's on the list, which is about, I think 3,000 people, gets a phone call. And then we can track who received the phone call and who didn't receive the phone call. And of course, we'll do social media and email as well. All right, so the phone notification is also to pick up the phone and notify people in specific areas if it's that serious. So let's take, for example, the William Head situation. That's where that would fall. Okay. How to get onto that emergency phone notification is through our emergency program website. So it's www.metchosinemergencyprogram.ca. On the front screen is a big button that says add me to the emergency list. And you click on that and that takes you to the screen over on the right there, and you just fill in your name and that comes directly to me. And we put you on the list. So you have to ask to be put on the list. It's not something we just automatically do. And I don't know if we can play this. This is what, we're gonna do a drill here in May. And this is what it will sound like if this works.
Exercise, exercise, exercise.
Probably not.
This is Stephanie with the Metchosin Emergency Program. There is no emergency. Please do not panic. The District of Metchosin is conducting a second test for our emergency notification program. If there had been an actual emergency event, this message would provide you with official information and instructions on what you should do. Thank you for participating in our drill and exercise.
So when we do our drill, that's the voicemail, that's our automated messaging. So I record what's going on, and then that emergency notification goes out to everybody, and that's the kind of message that you would hear. So it's my voice saying, here's what's going on, here's what I want you to do, only it won't say exercise. So when we do an exercise or a drill, that's what it will sound like, and we're hoping to do one here in May. So.
Chief, does it come with a special?
Whoops, sorry.
Does it come with a special like a ring or alarm, like those provincial level alerts that we get?
Okay, now I can't stop this.
It's just, or is it just a phone call?
Sorry, so it depends on where the event is. If it is so there's a new alerting system from the province, and that will also potentially come through as well. If it's anything catastrophic, like a tsunami or something, and the province is involved, you'll get that invasive alert that comes in. I'm sure everyone's signed up for different things, but we'll still send out ours as soon as we can too. Yeah. But there are some things that you may not know. So for example, let's say we had a hazardous materials spill, and we needed to get this out to everybody quickly. We would use this. The province may not know about it yet, so you may not get that automatic invasive alerting.
Gotcha.
So does that answer your question? Yeah. I don't know where we're at with this, but I think that's about all right now. We're good. I'm running low on my time here.
Current issues and concerns.
Yeah, that was the current, well, I'll see if I can throw it up there again. One time I don't wear my glasses and I can't see anything. There we go. Thanks. All right. And do that too.
Exercise,
Oh, I
exercise.
can't get that.
Stephanie with the Metchosin Emergency Program. There
All
is
right.
no emergency.
I don't know, Tina, if you can come up and help me get through this particular.
Thank you. Please
There.
skip that slide.
Let's see, emergency response.
There we go. Okay. Got it. Okay, our current issues and concerns right now, volunteers, always an issue. As our population ages, getting younger volunteers and people engaged in the emergency program is always a challenge. Structural stability, none of our emergency response structures right now actually meet any post-disaster Building codes, as we've already talked about. The backup power, we don't have backup power at any of our emergency response locations. That would be St. Mary's Church, that would be group lodging at the school, or this building. So we don't have any backup power. We have portable power. They can do limited support, but we don't have anything like we do at the Firehall or our EOC. And then supplies. Supplies are always going to be an ongoing challenge, whether that be food or water, clothing, that sort of thing. Our program this year, our challenges, our goals are going to be building redundancy and emergency support services program. So that's just getting people that, we've got volunteers to do the first 12 hours, but typically emergencies last longer than that. So we need to build that redundancy in management and team support. Documentation, getting our mutual aid agreements and getting use agreements within our local community up to snuff. Increase our group lodging and emergency food and water supply. Enhance our age-friendly reception center. We work with Seniors Resource on that. Always looking to build our pods, and then support planning for safety upgrades to our critical infrastructure. Yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Thank you. Any questions for Chief Dunlop? Yeah. Councillor Donaldson.
Yes, so the emergency phone notification, would it be worthwhile to maybe put something on the marquee and or into the Muse?
When we do when we do the actual test, we are going to, I have a blanket email that goes out as well. So we'll notify everybody of the date and time of the test so they can be sure to listen for it. Because I really do want to make sure that everybody answers the phone so that can record then for us and we know how many people actually received it. And what that message that you heard there was the last time that we did it, we ran it a second time because there were some of those that said they didn't get it, so we did it a second time. But it's really helpful, that way people know what to listen for and not to panic if they get it, but to understand that this is something they need to listen to. And it's not just, yes, it's an automated voice, but it's not spam. They need to listen to it. Yeah.
I have two more things. So you have a reception center at St. Mary's Church. And I thought in the past we heard that the school gym was another location possibly for a reception center.
Not for reception center, but for a group lodging.
Okay.
So the reception center is where people check in, and there's a lot of documentation, and you spend some time there. Like, we're talking a catastrophic event.
Sure.
And then from there, if they don't have anywhere to stay, so if it happens to be a regional event, we can't use the hotels in Langford because they're probably going to be full of Langford people. So if there's nowhere else to go, then we have to do our own group lodging. So that's where we care for them all here. So we have 200 cots, and we have the food and everything to be able to care for them up to 3 days there in the gym.
Okay. And the topic of food, what type of food are we talking about? Freeze-dried?
Yes. Yeah. So we have, right now we have a combination of such. We have some people that rotate the food for us. So we have some 25-year food, which I'm sure will be stellar if that ever comes up to it. So that's more the mealtime stuff, but we have lots of pasta and canned, stuff to make smaller meals, probably not 200 people's worth, but yeah.
Thanks.
Marilyn?
Yeah, thank you for your presentation and your work. I have two questions. One regarding pods. Where are we in signing people up in Metchosin for the pods? And then the secondary question is regarding our MOUs or memorandums of understanding. So on slide number 20, you were talking about the search and rescue and the different organizations or different municipalities in the South Island, Oak Bay, Esquimalt. Are those all memorandum of understandings that we have for mutual aid, or if that's for the search and rescue, I imagine we have it for the fire and emergency response as well?
Okay, let's start with the first one. So the first one regarding pods, Kathleen Sutherland is our pod leader, and that sounds a little alien-esque, but so she handles all that, and she's just done a fabulous job. We have, I think, around 34 pods right now. There are still areas that don't have a pod leader, a neighborhood emergency preparedness program. So we continue to work on that, but it's just, neighbors leave or the leaders leave, and then there's no one to take up. It does take some time to coordinate it, and the involvement of the neighborhood emergency preparedness program is as much as they want to give. So It's hit and miss, but compared to other communities, we do really well with our preparedness program. So I'm really impressed with that. So, regarding the memorandum of understanding, so to be clear, our search and rescue team is a provincial team. So let's just say, for example, there was a missing hiker up at out in Langford somewhere. That phone call would go to 911, and that would go to the RCMP, and the RCMP would then call out search and rescue. So it really doesn't have anything to do with Metchosin specific. We host Metchosin Search and Rescue, and as such, when we need them here under our emergency program for evacuations, to help us out with traffic, to do whatever those other things that we've talked about, they can come in and support us that way. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So we don't have to have a separate mutual aid or any kind of agreement with all the other places that they go.
Okay.
And as a fire department, we don't respond out that far, unless the province told us to. Then that would go through the province, an agreement that we have with them.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor.
Through you. Chief Dunlop, thanks very much. When was the last time that you called?
Had a vacation? A long time.
When was the last time you called an EOC, level 1, 2, 3?
So we've done level 1 3 times this year. So house fires, we have to call them in. They don't always actually get utilized, so that would be, we have a house fire and they can't stay there, it's not safe to stay there, or the house is just not livable, then we call our ESS director and she comes in with, supply of what they might need. And in that case, we'd send them to a hotel. Okay. So we notify the province and then they then support us with that. So they help do some, not a ton, but some funding support for that. So it's not always out of our pocket. So that's level 1 quite often. Level 2 and 3, not very often.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the floods that happened a few years ago, 2021, I think, and there was some minor flooding, but you didn't call the EOC in?
No, we might activate the EOC on that level 1 just because we need additional resources. We need people to call out somebody, or we need to fill sandbags, because the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center, have volunteers that are great workers, and they're such a support, and they want to help out the community as well. And from there, we can get convergent volunteers. So it's really about risk and responsibility and that liability, right? So we have to, using the EOC, we call in the province. So that's really what that's for. We have called in, we get this task number, you might have heard about that, and that provides a certain amount of funding back if we ever needed it. So another example would be the heat dome that we had. I don't think they called it a heat dome, but heat, higher temperatures. We did extreme heat, that's what it was. We were able to get a task number for that. So in case we needed to actually man our cooling centers, our cooling centers, we could then pay them a fee, or if there was any rental for that, we could recoup those expenses from the province. So the point of the EOC, the activation, if you will, is to get that task number so that we can recoup some of those expenses.
Okay,
yeah.
Great, thanks.
Who exactly, or which communities does the fire department have mutual aid agreements with?
So we have automatic mutual aid, which means we go, when they get a structure fire, we get a structure fire. And that would be with ESOOC, Otter Point, and SOOC. And then we have mutual aid agreements where we can go there. It's vice versa, like they can come here if we need them, with Highlands, Langford, and Colwood as well.
Yeah. Also on the emergency calling, is there's some kind of a name going to show up on the call display?
District of Metchosin. Yeah, that's what the plan is anyway. We'll try it out.
Okay, Councillor Gray.
Thanks, Chief Dunlop. It's really nice to get that explanation of how things work at the EOC. I'm just wondering if, I see that the mayor and council get involved at level 2, and then there's a mention of declaring a state of local emergency. Are there criteria that are used for that are established that we would be looking through?
Yes, there's a whole process for that, and that probably is not something you want to discuss here, but we can certainly have that discussion in person. There's a whole protocol in place for doing all that, for sure.
Great, and then maybe we could do that. And then there's policy decisions. I'm wondering, of course, we're not involved in operations. What kind of policy decisions would be made? Can you give anything just to give us a sense?
This is going to open up Pandora's box. But let's just say that you wanted to focus on a brush fire was coming through, and you needed to put a fire line through something that might be like school grounds or a cemetery. Those are items that you're going to make that direction.
Thank you. And then that's using the provincial priority list.
Yes,
Great.
with the powers that you get through declaring a state of emergency. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
That was great.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, move on to public participation. Do we have any takers on that one?
Put your hand up.
Sure.
Katie Nelson, William Head Road, and just clarification, please, for Chief Dunlop. When the thing about the self-evacuation, if an emergency happens, if you self-evacuate before the emergency is officially called, you're not covered. But if you self-evacuate and then an emergency is called for your place, you're still not covered if you evacuated before. Yeah.
So, great question. So, let's take the fires that happened up in the interior. If people got their, and there were some that they would, because it's going to take longer, like with animals and such, that they were giving special orders. But they would not pay for your hotel room, for example, on the 1st of April, if that order wasn't in place until the 2nd of April.
I see. No,
So,
but once the order is
Once the
in place,
order is in,
That's-
but you wouldn't get to choose where you go either. You go to the reception center and go through the process.
Of course.
Yeah,
yes. Thank you.
great question.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? All right, can we get a motion to adopt the minutes of February 13th?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Schicken, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? And move the receipt of the minutes of the Firehall Steering Committee of January 18th.
Move receipt.
Moved by Mayor Little, seconded by Councillor Schicken. All in favor? Thank you. All right, reports. Councillors update. So, well, the first thing, which is extremely exciting, I get to report that thanks to the efforts of our CAO and staff who put in the application, we have received a $14,350 Vision Zero and Road Safety Grant to put in the crosswalk at Hans Helgeson School. Yes, that was wonderful, and that was their efforts of getting that done. So, you know, now we can move on and basically not talk about it anymore. The other thing is that, which I don't have written in my councillor's report, is I was trying to contact Rogers regarding what Alison brought up about the bright lights affecting the flyaway out in Nisuk for the cell tower out there. So I did get a hold of somebody, and he seemed to. I got apologies for not responding sooner, but I'll just read what he says, so it's pretty quick. It says, regarding the tower lights at Beecher Bay, I think these were the newer LED types. I can look into this with our operations team to see what we can do to lessen the light intensity. I think we have done similarly to other sites when the LED proved to be much too bright. We do have to follow NAV and Transportation Canada requirements, and that's why the lights were installed in the first place, but I can definitely look to see if we can go back to less intense bulbs. So we'll see, and maybe anyone who lives around there that can see the lights can just kind of keep an eye on it and see if anything actually happens there, but I'll also try to keep in contact with him. So we're running on, so I won't say too much about my councillor's update, except one thing is to mention that the Metchosin Senior Association and Resource Centre are holding the annual general meeting on Friday, March 24th, 1 to 3 p.m. at the Community House, and the guest speaker is Gabby Townsend of the Family Caregivers of BC. And she's going to discuss about, caregiving, the complexities, and the services provided there. So that'll be a good one to attend for anyone that might be involved in those kind of situations. Also, I was going to ask you, do you have a date for the Repair Cafe? Because I think you had one, but I forgot to look it up.
It's April 23rd.
So April 23rd, the Repair Cafe at the at MACCA. So maybe you could just whip up and just explain what exactly a Repair Cafe is.
I'm kind of new to the repair cafe business, but apparently it's a worldwide phenomena where all these towns, especially in Europe, they have repair cafes where experts in various electronics and fixing tools and you name it, people come in and can get their devices repaired. So we're going to have the first one out here in Metchosin on April 23rd, and we're going to have a bunch of fixers and repair tables, and it's welcome to the public if you got any broken shovels or, I won't say electronics, I don't know anything about electronics. But we have a recycle van there. If you have any broken electronics, they'll take them. So yeah, we're pretty excited about it. It's going to be pretty popular, I'm sure, for not only this year, but years to come.
That's great. Thanks. It should be quite an interesting event. See how that works out. I know it's for smaller things, but I sort of have this vision of people lining up with their trailers with washing machines and dryers and dishwashers. But okay, and so that's all. We do have the Firehall Steering Committee update in here, so let's find it. I knew it was here somewhere. So anyway, there's a couple of recommendations. So I did a couple of requests. One is that the Public Works and Productive Services Committee recommend Council refer the Firehall Steering Committee terms of reference back to staff for review as per the recommendations from the Steering Committee. Can I have, I will move that. I have a seconder. Seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Any discussion?
Yes, thanks, Councillor. I'm not clear on why the terms of reference are being changed, or what's the nature of the request here.
Perhaps, I think it was just to firm things up, but I'm...
Okay.
I believe it was the membership.
Yeah.
Okay.
It related to the membership.
Okay, thank you. It was just kind of to clarify the as Tina said, the membership. So, any other discussion? Okay, all in favor? Okay, and then I move for the second one that Public Works and Protective Services Committee recommend Council allocate up to $80,000 in the 2023 to 2027 5-year financial plan for a Firehall feasibility study. Have a seconder for that?
I'll second for discussion.
Seconded by Councillor Shukin. And discussion?
So, thanks very much again. I might actually move an amendment to the motion. But the one thing I just want to mention myself is I've been privy to discussion and comments about the need for a new fire hall. But it's been kind of in bits and pieces over the years, and I am wondering if we could get a staff report or even bring forward a new staff report on the rationale for the new fire hall. I feel like as much as we know we need one, I don't know if I can articulate exactly why, and it would be great to have it on paper so we're all really clear about what's before us. So that's one matter. But the, and I do recognize that yourself, Councillor Epp and Councillor Donaldson are on the steering committee, so you know much more than I do. But what I would like to entertain is, I'm losing track here of when to make an amendment to the motion, but what I would like to see is not so much that an allocation of $80,000 be made, but that this be referred to one of the budget planning meetings and it be considered for allocation. So it's just that word consider. I think it's a worthwhile thing to do, but I think it needs to be considered within the larger budgeting process that we have underway right now. So.
I think it has to go through the budget anyway, doesn't it? So.
Yeah. Okay. I guess the one thing is if the way it's worded here is that we're essentially approving the $80,000 as opposed to consider it. So so I would move the amendment that that the Public Works and Protective Services Committee recommend the council, through the budget planning process consider an allocation of up to $80,000 in the current 5-year plan.
Could I have a seconder for the amendment? Seconded by Mayor Little. Any discussion on the amendment?
I think, I'm not sure if it's the amendment or the motion, but she asked for a staff report. I'm new to the committee, and the meeting that we had in January gave a lot of background, but I'm sure there's much more that the council probably doesn't have, or maybe even previous council and certainly public, seeing how this is public money we're talking about. So if we had, I did ask the chief about a timeline, which some of us have gotten, but if we could have a timeline as to what has been done, because there has been some work done, there's been geotechnical, that sort of stuff done. So the committee is a very diverse group of people with very interesting backgrounds that have done a lot of work to this point, but we're not aware of all of what that's. And then what does the feasibility, I know when we were in the meeting, 80,000 wasn't a number that we had come up with. I think this came a little bit later, but what is it actually going to cover? So what is in a feasibility study so that the public is aware of that as well?
Well, perhaps I could ask for the CAO's advice on this one.
Through the chair, I think it's a good recommendation to bring forward a report on the background work that has to be done. So I do agree with Councillor Donaldson, is that report bits and pieces that applies to myself as well. So that to just bring forward a comprehensive background information report, and of course that has to go through the budgeting process. In this case, if council approves the application, it will have to be through the one-time request, which will not be for another 2 weeks, or 3 weeks actually, sorry.
Okay, so do we need a motion for that report, or?
Yes, please.
So now I'm lost. What do we do with all these other motions? What order do we go in?
Councillor, I think we have a motion on the floor, so maybe we deal with that one and then go back to the other.
Okay, well, I guess we're voting on the amendment then.
Yeah.
So, all in favor?
Do you want to repeat the motion,
Yeah.
just so everybody's clear?
Yeah, I'm going to hope Tina can fix this up a little bit. So that the Public Works and Protective Services Committee recommend to council through the budgeting process that it consider allocating up to $80,000 in the 2023-2027 budget per 5-year fiscal plan for the Firehall feasibility study. So
Okay, so moved, and you seconded that, didn't you? So seconded by Mayor Little. All in favor?
Amendment?
Mm-hmm.
To the amendment.
yeah.
So now I'm sure back, do we go back? Is that good enough, or do we need to go back to the original motion?
No, because the original.
That was it, at the end. Okay, well then I will move that we ask staff to compile a report on, what was that one?
Well, I think it's the reason, it's the background on why it's background on the Firehall, the current status, and the reason why it needs to be considered for replacement. But also to Councillor Donaldson's point, it's specific to the feasibility study. It's what might be contained in that.
Okay.
Also, there was a needs study that the fire chief had done, and I can't remember, it was 8 or 9 years ago. That was a report, so it identified the needs, our needs going forward, as opposed to somebody else telling us what our needs are. And I think that document should be included woven into that report as well, since it's already done. It's still relevant, I think. But I'd like to also see, of course, those reports, the geotech reports and everything. It's a lot of money, $80,000, considering we were hoping to get $40,000 for an agricultural plan. It was locked down to $20,000. $80,000 is a lot of money.
Well, it's up to, it wasn't 80, it's up to 80, so it was just kind of Chief Dunlop.
Sorry, it's not 80,000 all. The max we were gonna do was 50. They were thinking it's gonna be around even less, considerably less than that for a feasibility study. So I don't know where the 80 came from, but that's way too much. Right?
This was all sent in.
Yeah.
Right. There's all background information we have.
So I think we just need to move that to ask staff to provide more information on what's been done regarding the fire hall.
Yeah.
Can we have a seconder for
I'll
that?
second that.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Gray. Any more discussion? Councillor Gray?
Yeah, but just that's very helpful. I think getting a sort of a comprehensive look at things. I mean, struck that we've got a problem with the roof immediately, or perhaps it's fixed. So we need to know where we are with that. And then the Firehall replacement will be a very large expenditure. Of course, we have a reserve fund. You know, how might we build a reserve fund to help pay for this? And then, you know, what are we talking about, rough cost of replacement? And what sort of engineering work has been done? Or what's the real question? As Councillor Shubrook is asking, why are we doing this right now? Or why are we planning for it right now? What's the rationale behind the plan? Would be very helpful.
Any other discussion? Okay. All in favor? Great.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. We also have received for information emails from Bill Cave and Ann Shubrook. And that brings the end to our business, so can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor Shukin. All in favor?